So, yeah, my name is Nathan Scott. I'm the Executive Director of MassEnergize, and we are pleased to have you here for our monthly Community of Practice webinar. And this is a place for dialogue. It's a place to learn new things. It's also a place to ask questions. So there will always, as always, there will be a time towards the end for questions, sharing. If you've got things going on in your communities, we'd love to hear what you're doing. If you have questions for each other, this is a good place. So tonight we have two different presentations. The first is going to be by a colleague of ours from the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, and I'll introduce her shortly. And then the second part of the evening, we're going to be speaking about a project that MassEnergize undertook with funding from MassCEC, talking about how to engage EJ and underserved communities. So before we do, I just want to give the opportunity for anybody who's new to introduce yourself, or just tell us what brings you here, or tell us where you're from. And we like to get to know and welcome newcomers. So if you are new here and wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit, coming off of mute and maybe turning on your camera just so we can say hello. So I'll pause and let anybody who would like to introduce themselves briefly.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Okay.
Linda.
This is Stout from the City of Gloucester. I'm the energy coach here under the Mass Save program. And someone had sent me your contact information, so I thought I would check out one of the meetings and see what I can gain, what knowledge I can gain here.
Great. Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Hi, I can introduce myself real quick. My name is Aniza. I'm on the Empower team at MassCEC, and I'm excited to be here and learn more.
Welcome. Okay, anybody else who'd like to introduce themselves? Okay, well, if not, everybody, I hope you're feeling comfortable and welcome. We usually start with a few announcements, so I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, Megan and Joe, to talk a little bit about our upcoming annual conference.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, so the conference, for those of you who haven't been to this meeting before or don't know much about MassEnergize, each year we host an annual conference. This year it's taking place on April 8th at Bentley University in Waltham. And it's a day of learning and connecting, where community leaders across Massachusetts will get together. If you haven't registered already, please do. Yes, and then we are also this year doing some post-conference workshops on the second day, April 9th. We're looking at doing those, some deep dive workshops. So the first day of the conference is learning. We've got lots of breakouts going on, an opportunity to see keynote speakers, plenary speakers, and then April 9th, we're hoping to do some deep dive workshops. So we've got two workshops for people to choose from that will run concurrently with each other on the morning of April 9th. And the first one is a workshop on funding, which is hosted by the Green Community Catalyst. And yeah, that's on funding. And the title of that workshop is A Secret Sauce to Ramping Up Community Engagement, Your First 10K. So that's the first workshop. And then the second deep dive workshop is being run by MassEnergize with Daniela Salazar. And that's more of a deep dive into Canva and content creation in Canva and design tools. So that one's more of a bring your laptop. We'll teach you some skills and you'll have some time to practice as well. Both of those workshops are priced at $85, and we're asking people to sign up by March the 1st for those to make sure that we have enough participants in order to run those two workshops. So So we have the conference on April 8th, and then separately we have the deep dive workshops on April 9th, also taking at Bentley University. Megan, would you like to add anything?
I would just like to add that it's going to be another great conference. And we are hoping to have all our breakouts up and on the website February 15th. So about a week from now. But I can tell you that we have a lot of really good ones: combating and identifying misinformation, starting a heat pump coaching program, power mapping, how to understand power and influence it in your town, using psychology to build better climate messages, which, if you were here last month, was Greg Sparkman and his colleague Anna. We thought that conversation was so good that it needed its own breakout, so they're going to come back. Building partnerships for a resilient community, how conversations about climate resilience and people thinking about mitigating and adapting to climate change are good entry points for conversations. And engaging moderate income residents to take action. Anyway, there are going to be a ton of them. We're going to have 14 different breakouts for you to choose from. I know it'll be hard, but it's going to be good. We're going to end the day with a nonprofit fair and resource hour, which should be good. And you get to learn from other organizations, find out organizations are around and what they're up to and how you might use them in your current climate work in your town. So we're very excited. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Put them in the chat. I think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you. And as I just want to remind everybody, last year, as you know, our conference was at the end of April, and this year it's going to be at the beginning of April. So even though it's still in April, it's 3 weeks earlier. So don't wait to register or sign up. And those deep dive workshops, those are a new feature that we're adding this year. So all of that's available on our website. And Ariha has put our website link to the conference in the chat. I do see another comment from Jamie just talking about some social media a screening of something during Climate Week. And I do want to also just quickly announce, for those of you who aren't familiar, New York City and San Francisco have been having climate weeks for, I don't know, many years. I don't know how long. But this year is going to be the first Boston Climate Week. And we and others are starting to organize events. That's going to be from, I believe it is May 3rd through the 10th, I believe. But it's that first week of May. So do keep your eyes open for climate events during Climate Week. It's kind of a self-organized, disparately organized event, and different people can host different things. So it sounds like there's going to be some screenings of movies. We at MassEnergize are going to be hosting some events as well. So stay posted for Climate Week during the first week of May. Okay, so moving on, I do want to also just announce a event that's happening. This is very short notice, but the Elders Climate Action is hosting an event tomorrow. And they are having a speaker talking about the climate obstruction industry. And I did put a link in the chat just to a webinar that's going to happen tomorrow from noon until, I think it's either 1:30 or 2. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but there is a link in the chat under climate obstruction industry. So if you're interested, Naomi Oreskes is going to be also speaking or introducing the speaker, and this is hosted by the Elders Climate Action. Okay, I think, are there any other quick announcements of events that people want others to know about? We've mentioned a couple, but I do want to get started with the presentations. But if you have a pressing event you want to share, you feel free to put it into the chat. Okay, so moving on, we do have the pleasure of having Amanda Barker, who is a program manager at the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, speaking to us tonight about a recent project that they have been funded for. And it has, like all things climate and clean energy, she has an acronym to her presentation, which is DERs for LMIs. And Amanda, I'm going to have you explain what DERs are and who LMIs are. Go ahead, Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nate. And thank you all for having me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you all see that okay? Awesome.
Yes.
Cool. So as Nathan was saying, we received a grant from the MassEnergize Empower program to essentially do a deep dive on both the barriers and opportunities for low and moderate income households and renter participation in both connected solutions and emerging distributed energy resources, which I know is a mouthful. We really tried to create a smaller title, hence the acronym that Nathan just mentioned. But I will be going into all of the technologies and programs that we're looking into in the next couple of slides. But that is the overview of the project. So, quick agenda, brief overview of Green Energy Consumers Alliance and who we are in case you're not familiar. Then I will do an overview of the project goals. I will walk through the distributed energy resources that we are exploring. And then I would love to have a conversation with you all to get your thoughts and feedback on the technologies, if you're familiar with them, if you have any of them installed in your homes, and how your experience has been with them if you do. If not, I'd love to hear, if you would be interested in them, why or why not, what are the barriers that you see for low income adoption, things like that. So would love for this to be more of a conversation. So feel free to raise your hand and chime in as I'm going through, and then we'll definitely leave time at the end as well. So about Green Energy Consumers Alliance, we are a nonprofit organization based in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And our mission is to empower consumers and communities to speed a just transition to a zero carbon world. And we do that through both programs and advocacy. So on the program side, we do a lot of consumer facing educational content about basically any way that you can decarbonize: heat pumps, electric vehicles, solar. And then on the advocacy side, we have policy advocates in both states that work to help the states meet their climate goals. So project overview. The goal of this project is to identify key barriers and opportunities for low-income households and renters to adopt distributed energy resources. And hopefully through our research, we will be able to gain enough insight to either develop a program to help low-income households adopt these technologies, or develop an advocacy agenda to go to the State House and say, hey, we need to make these reforms to make these technologies more accessible. So we're not going in with any preconceived notions. We're not really sure where this is going to take us, but we're just looking to learn how we can help make a difference and ensure that these technologies are equitably adopted by all. The methods that we are using is we have a survey going around that I will definitely put in the chat once I'm done presenting, and would love for you all to fill it out, asking about the technologies, asking your thoughts on them. And then we have several program associates that are doing a deep dive into the various different technologies, doing a literature review on them. And then lastly, we are also doing stakeholder interviews where we're interviewing everyone from, the manufacturers of the technology to affordable housing developers to landlords, community-based organizations, really just trying to get several different perspectives on the technologies. So now to get into the fun part, which is what are these technologies that we're exploring? The first are smart thermostats, which you may have heard of. They basically set schedules with different temperatures throughout the day, and you're able to control it from an app on your smartphone. They also use sensors and data to learn your routine and preferences, and are able to detect, when you go to bed and lower the temperature when you're going to sleep, or maybe when you're not home, they'll be able to lower the temperature. And the overall goal here is to just help lower energy bills and reduce wasted energy. The next technology that we are looking into is battery storage, which I think we're all familiar with. It stores electricity when it's cheaper or abundant, and it allows you to use that stored power later, either during outages or when there are high price periods on the electricity grid. Now, both smart thermostats and battery storage are compatible with a program called Connected Solutions, which is run by the big electric distribution companies in Massachusetts. And it's essentially a peak load reduction program where the utilities are trying to reduce demand on the grid during times of peak stress, when the grid is stressed. So there are two different enrollment types. There's batteries, where the utility will draw energy from home batteries when the grid is stressed. And then there's the smart thermostats, where the utility can, virtually adjust your home temperature during peak hours when the grid is stressed. And then, of course, they offer an incentive for you, allowing them to be able to either, turn down your temperature or call on your battery. So for the thermostat, it is a $50, you get $50 for enrollment, and then $20 to $25 per summer per thermostat. And if you are on the Eversource R2 rate, which is the low-income discount rate, you get $100 for enrollment. For the battery, you get $225 to $275 per kilowatt that the utility calls on. The next technology is battery storage paired with solar. So this is where the battery stores excess solar energy that is generated during the sunny hours in the middle of the day. And then you're able to use that stored solar power in the evening or at night when obviously the sun is not generating power for you. And this allows you to reduce reliance on the grid when solar production drops. The next technology is induction stoves with battery storage built in. So this works like a standard induction stove, but it has a built-in battery for energy storage. And the battery charges up when electricity is cheap and abundant, when the grid is not stressed. And then when the grid is stressed and electricity is expensive, the induction stove calls on the electricity from the battery instead of from the electricity grid, helping to reduce demand. The next technology is window heat pumps, which are similar to window air conditioning units, but they use much less energy and are able to provide both heating and cooling. They are able to just plug into a standard 120 volt outlet, and they do not require electrical upgrades or professional installation. So they're a good alternative if you're not able to install actual heat pumps for any of the several barriers that come up sometimes. And so we're considering, looking into how this could be a potential solution for renters who don't have a say over their heating system. The next technology is battery-enabled heat pumps. This is currently being piloted by Carrier. It's in very early stages, but it's essentially where they are pairing their heat pumps with small batteries. And similar to the induction stove with batteries, the battery charges when grid demand and prices are low, and then the heat pump runs off the battery during peak demand periods when the grid is stressed. And this helps to reduce costs and grid strain while maintaining comfort for the household. The last technology that we are looking into is plug-in or balcony solar. These are small solar systems that you can put on your balcony or really anywhere, but they're really popular in Europe, where there are a lot of balconies that people just put the panel off the side of the balcony, as you can see in this picture here. These systems plug into a standard outlet, so there is no contractor needed. the typical size is 0.8 to 1.6 kilowatts versus the typical size of a full residential system is 7 to 15 kilowatts. And the systems typically come with panels, microinverters, and connector cables. And the generated energy offsets household electricity usage. It's not going to offset the entire household electricity usage. It's not big enough for that, but it can help here and there. And it is not connected to the main grid, so there's no backfeeding to the grid, so you wouldn't get net metering credits for it. But it's viewed as an affordable entry point for solar without roof installation. If that's not suitable for you, or maybe you're a renter and not able to install solar, this might be a viable alternative for you. I do want to note that right now, technically in Massachusetts, you would still need to get an interconnection approval and other approvals from the utility to have this system, which is viewed as a barrier because there are fees that come along with that. So right now there is a bill working its way through it's actually in the big energy bill, which I know has some not great parts, but this is one good part that's in it that would basically exempt you from having to get those interconnection approvals so that you don't have to pay those fees to get a system that's not going to backfeed to the grid. So those are all of the technologies that we are looking into. And as I mentioned, we do have a short survey going around asking people's familiarity with and interest in these technologies, and would really appreciate you filling it out to help shape our research findings and recommendations. And just to plug that at the end of the survey, you can leave your contact information and be entered into a raffle to win a $50 gift card as a thank you for your time. So I will send the link in the chat, but for now, I thought it might be good to maybe open it up for comments. I do have some questions that I would love to discuss with you all. So yeah, would first, anyone have any initial thoughts or comments on the technologies? And then if not, we can jump into some discussion questions if we have time.
So while people are thinking about some questions, Amanda, do check the chat. There were a couple of questions that came in right at the bottom of the chat for you. So maybe while other people are thinking of their questions, you can take a quick look there.
I'm happy to ask a question. Amanda, this is super great. I already filled out your survey. It seems like the batteries for things that allow folks to not have to put in 220 and avoid the upgrade cost on the electricity. So that's mostly induction, right? Or is it also heat pump?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so good list. I already filled out your survey. I'm trying to you went through it a little bit quickly. For the ones with batteries, heat pump with batteries, you still have to have the same electrical service. But for the induction, the battery allows you to run it off of 110, not 220, and have to upgrade and therefore you can avoid upgrading your electrical, correct?
Correct. That's the intent.
So is that the only technology where the battery is helping to reduce the need for upgraded service? I know with heat pump water heaters, sometimes you also have to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the different, it varies widely based on what your amperage is. But yeah, for the induction stove, the intent is with the battery backup, the intent is to ensure that you don't have to get that upgrade.
Okay. I just have one follow-up question, let others chime in. On the connected solutions, it lists a bunch of Wi-Fi thermostats and maybe not is there any process by which to encourage the utilities to add a few other commonly used Wi-Fi things? Or because I think it would be interesting in your survey for people to note if there are thermostats that are used that are not on the list that are already Wi-Fi.
That's helpful feedback that I could definitely relay to the utility. I'm not sure of the answer.
Thanks.
Okay, well, if you do have another question before we get into Amanda's questions, If there's anybody else, just go ahead and speak up because I can't necessarily see people's hands. So go ahead and speak up if you have another question for Amanda.
Amanda, I have a couple questions. First, for battery storage connected to solar, um, I mean, when we got our solar connected, the battery storage option was so expensive. It basically doubled the cost of the solar installation. Are those costs coming down at all? I mean, that was a barrier. Obviously, we didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I that is definitely one of the barriers that we've been hearing, from the get-go with this research. I believe costs are starting to come down, but definitely not as fast as we need. So that's definitely something that we're going to look into. I think if we were to do a program for low-income households, we would have to get funding to cover the cost of the system.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask about the window air source heat pumps. Are there any special programs within the Mass Save universe? One of our energy coaches in Acton had heard that there was a really affordable option, but he hasn't been able to make progress in actually connecting one of our apartment buildings with Mass Save.
Yeah, so right now my understanding is that window heat pumps are not covered under Mass Save. But we are definitely advocating for them to start offering a rebate for those systems.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask a question. This is Wendy.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to know if there are any fire risk with these battery storage units, like there has been with some EV storage.
That is definitely something that's gotten a lot of media attention lately. My understanding is that they all have to go through permitting and code approvals and, safety requirements to ensure that that is not an issue. But I'm certainly not an expert on that topic. I don't know if anyone else, does anyone have a battery and wants to speak to that?
In Acton, the fire department has a quite stiff requirements now for installing batteries in homes. They have to be in a sort of contained fireproof area.
We have the same thing, Wendy and Waylon. You have to have, if it's in a garage, then the drywall has to be fire resistant and so on. So I think each town has been struggling to come up with rules that make sense, I think, Karen, and there's been, some confusion on the guidance that they've been getting from the state. I think it's sorting itself out a little, but it definitely requires, there's some additional things you have to ensure in the space where the battery is for fire protection.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And I see a question in the chat about time of use rates. They are currently not in effect. That's definitely something that we are advocating for. I know that the advanced meters are starting to be installed throughout Massachusetts, and I think those are critical to enable time of use rates, where you basically pay a lower rate when you're, charging your EV off peak, essentially. But right now, these technologies can still be beneficial, for example, through the Connected Solutions program, where, you get that incentive from the utility for letting them call on your battery or smart thermostat.
I would like to call, I'm sorry, Karen, do you want to go ahead?
No, I already talked, you go.
I wanted to comment on the plug-in solar panels. I really applaud that initiative that you have, and I think the main issue is the regulatory barriers here, the cost that is imposed. I know they've been very popular in Europe, and of course they would do small things for each household, but overall, it reduces energy use on a much larger scale because it doesn't ever enter the grid. And I would be very excited to have this I know, I know renters who would love this, to just reduce their energy bills, and these are very easy solutions, I think, once those barriers are removed.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that comment.
I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, are there any multifamily like rental buildings? And I'm thinking like, larger buildings where not even in Massachusetts, but anywhere where these technologies have been deployed successfully to serve a renter population. Because renters are getting the really raw end of everything.
Yeah. That is, what we're researching and trying to find out. So if anyone knows of any programs like that, would really appreciate you sharing them with us. I know there is currently a pilot program for window heat pumps in Boston and I believe Lynn, that we are looking into, but I don't know all the details off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm curious. That's actually one of the questions that I have for you all. So we're learning with you about these technologies, and I'm curious if anyone does know of any programs for any of these technologies or clean energy technologies in general that have been successfully able to, offer these technologies to low-income households or renters. Does anyone know of any good examples?
I was able to sit in on a presentation by a professor from UMass Amherst this past year at the Franklin Library, talking very specifically about the utilization of things like smart thermostats to shave the peak. And I know I recall her talking about a program out that way that was specifically working on getting those in like renter and apartment scenarios to help with that, but I don't remember the name of the program. I can look into that though.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you wouldn't mind following up with me, my email is on the screen.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, was the question whether there were examples of window heat pumps in multifamily?
More general for all of the technologies, but yeah, if you know of one for window heat pumps, please share.
I just know. Okay, so right, I don't know about locally, but in New York City, there were a couple of major pilots put in a couple of years ago that were showcased at last year's NESE conference. And it's a good question whether this year's NESE conference might be following up with further examples of installations.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll definitely look into that. Cool. Well, we kind of jumped a little bit out of order, so maybe we can go back up to the top of the discussion questions. I don't know, Nathan, how much time do we have? I want to make sure we get to the other.
I'd say you can take another 5 minutes. We'll wrap up at by just before 8.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I would love to hear if anyone on this call has any of these technologies in your home already, and if so, what your experience has been.
I don't have the battery storage with solar, but I almost got that as a pilot with one of the the solar companies here. And so they are doing a pilot now of about 10 to 15 people in the Newburyport area. And they have installed these battery storage units. I almost got one, but then I decided not to because I was just nervous about the fire hazard potential. And also I have a nice floor in my, that I didn't put in, but was here previously, the previous owners, that they were going to have to drill holes in for screws. And it was also kind of not going to be located in a very good area for driving cars in. So, but I don't know if you wanted to talk to somebody here in Newburyport who was really running the pilot, I could give you his name.
Yeah, that would be great. If you want to email me afterwards or put it in the chat, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, if no one else has these technologies, would you be interested in any of them? And do any jump out at you as something that you really would want to pursue?
How available are the battery-powered induction stoves? I mean, that could be an entry point where people see, oh wow, this backup, I can still make a cup of tea when the power goes out. Maybe not.
Yeah, they're definitely in early stages. I think they're just starting to come out on the market. So yeah, maybe we'll be more widely available in a year or two.
Okay.
Did you mention photovoltaics without batteries as related to peak? In other words, where does peak air conditioning fall compared to peak photovoltaic production? And how does that relate or not relate to what you're talking about?
I mentioned just standalone batteries that you can call on whenever. You can call on it when the grid is stressed to power your AC, or you can call on it when you have an outage. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I appreciate that. And I'm just saying that often people have batteries or consider batteries in conjunction with photovoltaics, yet the peak demand, at least in summer, and this is my question, I don't know if you know it, but it can often coincide with peak production of photovoltaics.
Oh, yes. Yeah, totally agree. In the summertime, residential battery makes a big difference in terms of reducing demand on the grid when everyone's blasting their ACs.
I think just one comment for me. The connected solution seems like something that most people don't know about and could be promoted in towns for anybody who's got, I mean, there's 10 different thermostats listed there, and anything that helps shave the peak. It's sort of like the old demand response that we did with commercial meters. So it's something I think communities could easily promote. It's a good newsletter article for those of us who send out newsletters in our communities. So I think that's something that that's like on the shelf, ready to go, and you save money.
Agreed. Yeah,
there's no cost to it if you already have this.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that getting the word out about it is huge because a lot of people don't know about it for sure. Linda?
Yeah, my comment, and I had looked at connected solutions. One of the barriers is that unless you have my understanding is unless you have central air conditioning, you're not eligible to enroll in connected solutions. And so as a solution for especially low income folks, I don't see it as a viable technology or path for them to get anywhere. Is that correct?
That I didn't know that. So if that's the case, then yeah, that's definitely a barrier.
Yeah. So I guess before, you put it out there to people this is my understanding according to the National Grid program.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to know. I'll definitely look into it.
All right. And I do have one other, I'm confused about something, Amanda, is that the battery storage, other than solar and potentially a small amount, I guess, from the new type of technology of induction ovens, which I wasn't aware of, How would a resident power their battery to create any stored energy? Potentially an EV, but it's doubtful. So where else would you, how would you store? What would you charge the battery with?
I think you would charge it from the grid when the grid is not stressed during, hours when.
I don't get how you could do that. You can't reverse. I mean, we can get metering credits, but I don't know that you can charge it from the grid. You can charge it from solar. You can charge it potentially, like I said, from an EV if you have the right setup. But I don't know how else you're charging it.
Maybe that's why it's an emerging technology. I'm learning about these technologies with you all. That's why we're doing this research. I don't know if anyone else has experience with that.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
isn't your explanation that it's just like we charge every other battery in our household today? In this case, we're charging a battery for a particular purpose of storing electricity now for use later or at another time.
You mean, in other words, well, I'm not familiar with. In other words, you're saying if you had a battery, you could plug it in and charge it and then hold it in reserve for your own use if the power, as example, went out. But then you're paying for charging that battery. It's not
I think the idea is if you would charge it and then the utility could draw on the battery during peak times to avoid them having to pay big expenses and use dirty power plants at the peak. So you're like distributed storage, and when they pull from your battery, they're paying you a decent rate. So
I've not heard of that.
yeah, it's new, and I think
right.
it hasn't really happened yet, but that's the gist of it, right? Isn't that correct?
That's the intent,
Jean,
yeah.
you want to jump in, Jean? Maybe you know better.
It is not so new in some places in Vermont.
Right.
We have
Green
had
Mountain Power's been
battery
doing it, right?
and building with Green Mountain Power for the last I guess 7 years.
Right.
And it works very cleanly. We pay a monthly rate. We didn't buy our batteries. But we pay a monthly rate, which allows Green Mountain Power to draw off of the batteries at peak times. Recently, they have been drawing off in both the evenings and the mornings. In the summer, it's typically in the evenings when it's their peak loads, and they have found it very successful in reducing some of their peak load. And then
my sister actually has one in Vermont. Now you're reminding me because I coached them and I totally forgot the GMT program. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And,
I'm gonna look into it. Go ahead. Sorry.
When there's a storm expected or a power outage expected, then you get a notification that they are not going to draw power, so that the battery, all of the battery power, is reserved for the home use. So yeah.
So Jean, one clarification, and then we do need to move on. So how are the batteries charged, Jean? So they're just charged through the grid, correct? And
it depends. I mean, they are charged either from our panels or from the grid. It just depends. And we have Tesla batteries. I know there's different systems, but the app makes it very clear what direction power is flowing. And I mean, theoretically, I think our car batteries, some of the cars are starting to be able to do this now. Our car batteries are a whole lot bigger than the 2 batteries I've got in my house, and should provide a lot more capacity coming up.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. We are going to have to wrap up this part of the conversation just because we are going to move on to the next part. But Amanda, I do think you just put in the chat, did you not, the link to the survey?
I did,
So
yes.
please, everybody, take a look at the chat and click on the survey that Green Energy Consumers Alliance is doing, and they would appreciate your support. So, okay, so we're going to move on to a project that MassEnergize has been doing for the last little over a year. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're talk a little bit about the program that we call Supercharging Clean Energy Engagement in EJ Communities. Also, a little bit of a mouthful. But this really was our effort at MassEnergize with support from MassCEC, an Empower grant, to really investigate and support community organizations that are working in EJ communities. And so this is just a little bit, we've just wrapped up kind of this project, and I'd like to share with you what we've learned. So just give me a second here. Here we go. Okay, so a little bit about this project. Obviously, we're interested in EJ communities, specifically at how residents in EJ communities receive information and how they like to receive information. So because you can see our goal was to strengthen the capacity of two organizations to reach their residents. Our hypothesis was that by identifying culture and group specific barriers, we could address outreach methods that would address those barriers or that friction, and so to improve how community organizations engage with their residents. So the two community-based organizations we partnered with were the Fairmont Indigo CDC, Community Development Corporation, in South Boston, in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan area, and then Vineyard Power on Martha's Vineyard. So we designed a kind of a 3-phase program. The first phase was really just to do research and identification on the communication preferences that the residents had. Then the second phase was using all of that information that we gleaned. We at MassEnergize wanted to design and develop some user-friendly approaches that were specific to the communities that we're in question. So, obviously multilingual, and, we'll go into more of that. But that was kind of the second phase. And then the third phase is we wanted to test how well did we come up with solutions that really targeted the needs of these communities. So that was our process. And so here's a little bit of what we found out, or what we asked and what we heard. So obviously we started with a survey, and we had a fairly comprehensive survey, 47 questions, translated in both from English into both Spanish and Portuguese. And we worked with Professor Greg Sparkman at Boston College and the Social Influence and Social Change Lab. And many of you have had the pleasure of hearing Greg and his members of his research lab. They were actually on our call a month ago. So we did get almost 40 participants. Our target was to get 80 participants, 40 from each community. We got 76 participants, 40 from Fairmont Indigo and 36 from Vineyard Power. And we were able to, they shared a lot of information about their demographics, but also about their communication preferences. So here's just a few of the samples. These are the kinds of questions we asked. And I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see what we're trying to get at. One of the first questions you can see is, what are your primary sources of information? How do you find out about things that are going on in your community? Or specifically, how do you find out about recommendations that are being made by the community organizations where you work? So if FICC or Vineyard Power wants to engage you, or wants you to come to an event or do something, where do you receive that information, and how do you prefer to receive that information? So you can see these are just some samples. So you can see, where people do learn about their, so email, for those of you who wonder, email continues to be a top primary source of information. Social media obviously is there, flyers, posters, these ones that are not surprising to you, but you can see what people's responses were. In terms of social media, here you can see what people's preferences were. Where do you see informational flyers? This was interesting. Where do you glean information when you're out and about living your life at a coffee shop or grocery store? Is that where you find out about information? So here we can see that we identified libraries, healthcare sites, coffee shops, and grocery stores as the kind of some of the more common places. And then of course, not only how do you receive information, but where do you prefer to receive information? So we had, again, 47 different questions that we asked. And so what we did is we compiled all of that information, and again, worked with Greg Sparkman's lab to analyze the information. And then we came up with what we felt were going to be appropriate ways to, what's our intervention? Appropriate ways to implement strategies that were going to move the needle on how these communities both received and processed information. So what we came up with was a multi-channel approach, and we designed and implemented some of the interventions or some of the things that we were already working on. So many of you have heard about our social media magic. We also decided we should, do some Google search ads, and then finally, direct messaging using SMS, and that we, found to be an approach that people really wanted to try. Of course, there's the multilingual aspect of it as well. And those of you who are working in communities that speak languages other than English, you know that there's not just simply translation, but what we call transcreation, which is people, identifying not just what the linguistic, but also the cultural nuances of this. So now I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Ariha, who really helped us with the data of designing, developing our interventions. And what we did is we ran some mini campaigns. So I'm going to stop my sharing and let Ariha share her screen and tell you a little bit more about what we were able to test and then what our results were.
Thank you, Nathan. I'll take it from here. Just can someone confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Ariha Jain, and I'm the community and program support specialist at MassEnergize. I joined during phase 3 planning to coordinate our implementation for the campaign highlights and deliveries. Talking about Fairmount Indigo, our goal was to boost attendance at a specific party visa event they had. We ran a 1-month campaign where we handled heavy lifting. We created 4 ready-to-post social graphics with captions, and we also scheduled those posts for them in advance. And this experience proved that a consistent engagement is vital, but also time-consuming. So that's why we now offer social media magic toolkit to all the MassEnergize communities. And we create the templates for you, essentially putting your social media channels on autopilot so you can focus on the work on the ground. And coming back to FICC here, we also designed physical posters. This is one of the sample for the physical posters we worked that were posted in the community hubs like health centers and libraries. And then we also launched a 1-month Google Ads campaign. So here we have some of the results. Here's a quick we over 2,200 views online with 103 engagements. And here you can see this is the duration, October 1st to November 5th. Crucially, we also used bit.ly links and QR codes to track everything. Our bit.ly tracking showed around 58 direct clicks. These are the 58 engagements we got from social media. Some of the people, like 2 of them, scanned the QR code, so you can see where we got the source, and that confirmed that a digital is the primary driver for this audience, as we saw 0 scans from physical posters. So it was all social media engagement. Next, let's take a look at the highlights. So the goal for Vineyard Power was to drive signups for their energy assessments and income eligible programs. And this campaign for them ran for 6 weeks. We provided 8 multilingual graphics, both in English and Portuguese, and there were also 3 flyers designed. This is one of the sample flyer you can see here. We learned that their residents rely heavily on WhatsApp. This was learned in the initial surveys we had. So we made sure to distribute content there, which resulted in a good reach and engagement. Here's a quick snapshot for Vineyard. We tracked 17 direct engagements where residents clicked through the Vineyard Power link tree to access their services. We were especially thrilled with our Google Ads performance, as it was a first time setup for MassEnergize, and we achieved a 22.22% click through rate, which is incredibly high. Showed that we were able to target the right keywords for Amartha's Vineyard. Here's a quick community satisfaction comparison. As a part of phase 3, we ran a follow-up survey with the same residents from phase 1 to see if our new methods work. And here's the answer we got. So this is for Fairmount Indigo. We had 20 respondents, and we learned that 85 to 100% of the residents, they reported that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the improvements during the FICC Supercharging project. And here's a quick Vineyard Power satisfaction comparison taken by 19 respondents. Here we learned that 80 to 95% of the residents were satisfied or very satisfied with the improvements made. Next, here are some challenges. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. We learned that surveys, they take time. It took much longer than we expected to build and analyze a comprehensive initial survey. Next, we got some tech hurdles. Setting up SMS didn't go as planned due to some technical mismatches. For FICC especially, we learned that their audience would like to get notified by SMS for any of the events they had, so we were not able to set that up. For Google Ads, it was a steep learning curve for us, and especially after losing our specialist intern. Google Ads are really complex. That's what we learned, but we also saw that we can achieve really good results if we learn how to do that. Translation, to truly resonate, we found that it is essential to have native speakers review the content to ensure that the verbs, the tenses, or the tone, they are exactly right for the local community. So these were some of the challenges. We also had some key takeaways and recommendations. Here's what we learned. The number one thing was knowing your audience. Don't do the guesswork and find out which platforms they actually use before you start posting. Next for us was fragmented media. We learned people are everywhere. You can't just post in one place. You need a mix of social, email, and flyers. We also learned that reputation is a key, and Marketing 101 says that a person needs to see a message multiple times across different channels before they act. So our data proved that this surround sound approach actually works. We also learned that automation tools like Social Media Magic are essential to prevent staff burnout while maintaining a professional presence. And last but not the least, I would like to talk about data. We use data to find the gaps. We moved from assumptions to evidence. That's how we were able to successfully engage English isolated residents who were previously invisible to traditional marketing. And finally, here's what our partners had to say. Both FICC and Vineyard Power, they felt this project strengthened their capacity to reach invisible residents. And we also have Kendra from FICC to share about her experience.
Yeah, so actually, Ariha, if you want to stop sharing, and I just want to briefly introduce Kendra Beaver, who is staff at Fairmont Indigo. Kendra.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm glad to be here. My name is Kendra Beaver. I'm the Director of Climate Justice for the Fairmount Indigo CDC Collaborative here in Boston. I really appreciated this opportunity to collaborate with MassEnergize on this project. And it was also really interesting to learn from Vineyard Power because they're a very different environmental justice community than the ones that we work with here in Boston. And to Ariha's point, it was really important to be honest about those differences and then tailor our project from start to finish, be it the survey itself to how we change our messaging strategy at the end to the communities that we served. A couple of things that were really interesting was the survey in some ways affirmed some of our strategies, like relying heavily on email, but also brought some new ideas to the table that we hadn't considered before, like using SMS or texting to engage with residents. So that's something that we're excited to explore in the future now that we know that that's something that residents want. And then a tool that became really helpful when that was implemented was the social media magic, or the tool itself is called Plannable, which allows us to automate our social media messaging to folks. So we have had a much more streamlined experience now using social media as a way to reach the residents of the Fairmount corridor. And we're really grateful to have this opportunity with MassEnergize to use that, and not just for the duration of the project, but continuing now as a MassEnergize community to keep using that tool. I'm happy to answer specific questions. I'm sure Ariha and Nathan can as well. But I just want to thank the MassEnergize team for partnering with us on this and bringing some resources to dig into what the Fairmount corridor needs and wants from us when it comes to climate justice and health equity work in ways that are more formal and kind of research-based than the just hearing from folks and one-off conversations about what works for them. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendra. I really appreciate that. So we do have about, almost 10, maybe let's just take 10 minutes to answer questions from either the MassEnergize team or Kendra. And thank you, Kendra, for coming on tonight and being willing to share some of your experience. So I did see a couple of questions in the chat. Looks like Ariha maybe is responding to them. Other questions? We do have you on. If anybody, I have you on gallery view. So if anybody has questions, please go ahead and either raise your hand or just speak up, and we'll do our best to answer the questions. I guess while you're perhaps thinking about it, I do have a question for all of you. How many of you in your communities do have environmental justice populations who you either have not reached in the way that as effectively as you would like, or you maybe you are using some of these methods? Would love to hear from people who would like to be doing more, or who feel like they already are doing things that are working in terms of reaching communities that are not considered, non-mainstream or harder to reach. Anybody want to share?
I think it's an area for us in Franklin. Not sure how applicable it might be, but also it's an area that we definitely could be doing more research and looking into, about effective communication methods across our community. And I think it's good to see the different techniques being tried out in maybe a less traditional audience. Or like what we're an audience that we might not be as used to seeing, because I think that gives us a better sense of ways to try something else, to help reach people.
Yeah, thank you, Marissa. And we are certainly not only happy to, we will be sharing our takeaways. We're planning to write up kind of a not a cheat sheet, but a summary sheet of what some of the lessons are, what our recommendations are, what we think in consultation with both the Fairmount Indigo Collaborative as well as Vineyard Power, what we consider to be best practices. And so we'll be putting that together and sharing that with all of you. Yes, Ellen. Ellen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious. The methodologies that was used was to survey people,
Correct.
see what they would prefer. Then you tried things and then you evaluated, did you really get responses using the things that people told you they wanted to use? It's hard to do surveying in your community that's a hard thing to do. I know in the past, like in some communities that I've been involved with, we try different things and we just use bit.ly links to see like what's generating traffic. And that is a way of evaluating what we're doing to see what's working best. The downside is you can only evaluate what you're doing, not what you're not doing, Kendra, right? Like can't evaluate text if you're not actually doing text. So you don't think of things that you're not doing. That's the downside. So I'm just curious, having done surveying, and although you got decent numbers, it wasn't a ton of people, what your thoughts are is that Kendra, as a community person on, what would you do moving forward? Surveying, would you kind of try different things and see what traction you get, which is maybe less complicated? So I'm curious.
Yeah. I see your point about you kind of don't know what works if you're not trying it out. What I did appreciate about the survey, though, was that we asked people for their thoughts on outreach methods that we were not doing at the time, like texting. So if you do have the opportunity to survey people and you can kind of brainstorm other methods of communication or outreach that is an option, or maybe partner orgs are doing, but that you're not doing, I would definitely suggest including that as a kind of first pass at gauging whether people are interested in that without you needing to actually invest the resources into trying it out first. Um, sorry, I'm forgetting your question, the second
I
part.
think that was basically it. Like, it's hard to do survey. You got to design the survey.
Yeah.
You got to get people to take it. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's not something that every community can do. What we can do probably a better job is of what we're doing, track what's actually generating traffic, but it has this downside that you just highlighted. And that I also thought, like you're missing what you're not doing. So, I don't know, Ariha or Nathan, if,
I would add to something that we have tried to do, this is kind of separate from this project, but something that we have tried to do more consistently when we're hosting events or meetings or workshops is in the RSVP form, which we almost always have an RSVP form for our work, just so we can get a sense of who's coming, so we can send out reminder emails so we can add them to our list. But we like to ask, like, how did you learn about this? And offer a few examples like social media from a staff person in our newsletter, and then the other box. And that is, again, not like bulletproof, but an interesting way to get a general sense of like most of the people who signed up heard about it on Instagram. So it looks like that is working to some degree. So that would be another tip I would suggest. That's not too heavy of a lift.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add a couple of thoughts. So Ellen, yes, I mean, I think the pros and cons of the time and effort and expense of running a survey versus kind of more informal forms. I mean, I think that if you look at some of our results, I mean, we essentially did both, right? We all both asked a question, but then we wanted not only to just ask people what they thought, we wanted to try out things. And it was interesting to us that we did use bit.ly on the printed posters, And we saw that like nobody came to the event because of through the bit.ly link of the printed poster. And yet we also do feel that like those posters continue to be important, even though nobody technically came, according to the bit.ly, that bit.ly pathway. So, I mean, I think that ultimately, and I mean, this is kind of cliche, but both and is really the best way to kind of to learn about and then to test what your community, is looking for, or how best to reach them. So that's not, kind of a revelatory response, but at least it really, I think the more comprehensive we can be in terms of thinking about our communities and how we're reaching them and how we're testing, I think the better off we are. Okay, any other questions? I'm going to share just not so much, but a slide, but just to share contact information about this project should anybody want. The two communities, if you aren't familiar, the two communities are the two community-based organizations. Kendra's is the Fairmont Indigo Community Collaborative, and then Vineyard Power. And we had the good fortune of working with staff on both sides. And unfortunately, Tamaris, who is on Martha's Vineyard, was not able to join us tonight, but she did share some of her reflections. And I think, I hope, Kendra, both communities, will continue to implement some of the things that you learned. I mean, that's ultimately what we're hoping to do, and building your capacity, but collectively, all of our capacity to do a better job at engaging priority communities or communities that are, are not always receiving the full benefits of either our services or our communications. So, okay, so I will just say before we go on, and we're going to switch to some final wrap-ups, but are there any last questions or comments about the supercharging? And my hope is that we've inspired some of you at least to think more creatively about how you can and do reach communities, whether they're environmental justice communities or other segmented populations, perhaps elders, perhaps youth, perhaps there's these other communities in subsets of your community who you are not engaging. And my hope is that you think creatively about how you could be reaching them more comprehensively. So, okay. Yes. Oh, and Kendra's just adding, there's a few things in the chat. We did offer gift cards to people who took the survey. So yes, there was a certain expense. And again, we are grateful to MassEC for some funding that helped support the design development and the survey process. So. Okay, well, thank you. So now what we're going to do, we just have about 15 minutes left in the evening. Would love to hear just general updates from community members, questions, things that are going on, things that you want to share, things that you want to ask, maybe of any of our speakers, if Amanda's still with us. But this is kind of just an open time for sharing and discussion. So feel free to either speak up or just raise your hand.
Nathan, I'm wondering if I really appreciate all the input that that you guys have been lining up for us in the community of practice meetings, but I'm feeling a need for a session where we can spend a lot of time just talking about like how we're all coping with various elements of the current situation, including updating the website. Um, because I feel like we don't get a chance to talk to each other that much recently. So just a thought.
Yeah, no, thank you, Karen. Really appreciate that input, that feedback. And yeah, would be happy to maybe have the next time we get together be a time of open sharing and reflection. There's a great deal of value in that. So Karen, thank you for that request and reminder. I will ask that people who, are maybe feeling sometimes a little shy, that you come, willing to share, willing to ask, willing to engage in discussion. But yes, Karen, absolutely. I affirm that. On a much smaller level, I mean, it's not, 10 minutes. Are there anybody who would like to share? Karen, do you have questions for others in the community? Is there something you'd like to share? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
I saw recently an article or a blog about climate hushing. And I wonder if others of you feel like that is happening in our communities. And at the same time, I think that, what's been happening with ICE and, the attack on democracy is, people, we're all trying to figure out how do we respond to all these different levels. So I don't know. I guess like part of it is I want to ask, are other people feeling overwhelmed? Are you finding ways to feel hopeful? Or are you just putting climate to the side for now?
What kind of climate hushing have you heard or experienced?
Well, I think part of it is just that people aren't talking about climate. I mean, if you guys go, well, let me give you an example. That the vigils or the standouts at the ICE detention center in Burlington. I sometimes carry a sign that says climate justice, immigrant justice. And people are a little bit uncomfortable with that. Like, why are you mentioning climate justice at this venue? Like the issue should stay separate. Or like another example I could give is what's happening right now in the House Ways and Means Committee. That, the Cusack legislation to me feels like, stepping back from climate goals is a way of sort of like climate hushing, like, it's too expensive. It's costing people too much money. So it's not like anybody's coming up to my face and saying, don't talk about climate. But I did have someone say to me that climate is not a mission for people of faith because mission only applies to people. So that was really weird. But anyhow.
So it's kind of subtle, but
it's more subtle.
Yeah.
But I mean, people who are in the field of sustainability and climate are talking about this, right, Fred?
So I'm glad, Karen, that you brought this up. Thank you so much. Climate hushing, gosh, I hadn't heard that term. Sounds right. Dave Roberts in his most recent podcast, how did he say? He said, "How's the climate doing?" It's almost like he had to say it 3 times. How's the climate doing? And he said the most that progressives are saying is the word affordability, imagining that covers it. Anyway, I'm chuckling here that's my coping mechanism for the moment. And I just put in the chat, no link at this moment, but it looks like there's going to be an effort among climate organizations in Massachusetts around March 28th to be explicit about climate, to address your question, Karen. So that to reduce the discomfort about disconnects. And so that's all I'll say, except to say that when I get up on a soapbox these days, I say there's an explicit, definite connection here. Distraction is part of the point. Accumulation of wealth is the central point, and as well. And what better way to distract good, caring people than to make a much more loud and in your face and you can't ignore it problem.
Yep.
All right. So there is a little soapbox there, but thanks.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from others. What's been your experience?
I have a volunteer, an active volunteer who recently just told me that she's got to back away from climate because she has to deal with politics. And if she's going to spend her time and her money someplace right now, that has to be that.
Go for it, Jean.
Well, I'm trying to find the article that Mike Roy, who joins us here sometimes, sent around to our climate group in the last few weeks that basically was a great way of talking about why we still need to be working on climate and how it's related to everything else. And the climate versus religion pieces, I don't really get. I know that the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont, I know some people who are working on it. They basically call it planet care. You know, they're and are have some pretty meaningful policies that they're putting forward for the whole diocese in Vermont. So I think there's ways to work through this stuff, but yeah.
I'm a piece of million, so it's good to hear.
Yeah. It's true, I don't hear it, discussed as much.
I do think it's something that I've heard a lot of folks talk about, especially in terms of, trying to figure out energy and about time balance allocations. There's a lot of things to pull people's attention, I guess all of the time, but like how are you allocating it right now to different projects, I think has definitely been coming up more and more as discussions. So I know our website is probably one of the last to make the transition. So I know for us, there's been a big focus on trying to make that happen, but it's not always, everyone's got, I guess, different balances that they're trying to weigh.
Hey, balances is a good word, and keeping us unbalanced is a very working strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing is, if we don't achieve, for instance, 2030 climate goals in Massachusetts, ... who wins?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll just add a reflection. I mean, to me, it's inconceivable that these things are not so interrelated. I mean, I have a hard time understanding how people can separate. I mean, what's going on at the federal level, with immigration is absolutely related to climate and related to the work we do. I mean, and so I'm hoping that I'm hoping this view is shared amongst us that, perhaps it behooves us to be making those connections more explicit to people. And Karen, I really appreciate that you're saying, yes, immigrant justice and climate justice go hand in hand, along with all, other forms of justice. So I'm a little perplexed by the people who can and do separate them. I do understand that, we do have to focus our time and energy, but I find it hard to understand how we can't continue to see those as completely interrelated and interdependent. But yeah, as I said, maybe we just need to be doing a better job being explicit about that. Other reflections, other people's experiences relating to, how are you navigating these times, as troubling and dark as they are? and keeping working on climate while at the same time we work on these other interrelated issues. So yes, Linda.
Yeah, well, my firsthand experience dealing with folks here in Gloucester, especially for the low income demographic, and a lot of those people are immigrants, and they do not want home energy assessments done. They don't want anyone coming into their home. They don't even want people to know they exist. And I've had energy audits canceled for that exact reason. So people are very, they're apprehensive or basically scared. And so they don't need to rock the boat about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other reflections, and then we're just going to be just wrapping. We'll wrap up here very soon, but want to give anybody else a chance to offer how you're feeling, how you're doing, how you see things, and how you are keeping the faith at this time.
I just want to give a shout out back to you, Nathan, and all of MassEnergize. You mentioned dark times. It's also wicked cold times, and and all the work that all the good people here and in all our coalition do to keep people warm, and it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Fred, and really appreciate the work you're doing at MCAN and all of you. And I certainly don't mean to suggest that people don't need and are forced to focus on the things that are most immediate. And I think what Fred said earlier about what better way to distract somebody with something than to, really get in your face. And as Linda shared, people who don't have the privilege of the securities that many of the rest of us do have to focus on what they're most immediately afraid of. So, well, not to
And
end
if
on
you haven't,
yes, Jean, go
if you
ahead.
missed the Super Bowl yesterday, which, you Massachusetts people, I'm guessing maybe you were tuning in, but if you didn't, at least go watch Bad Bunny because he was pretty awesome.
That was
Awesome.
so cool.
Right, a shout out to Bad Bunny. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Jean. That's good.
Can I
Okay,
just say
well,
thank you
yeah.
to Amanda and all the folks at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, because Energize Acton, because we have this a unique relationship with our sustainability office. We're not allowed to do advocacy, so I can't send out an email and say, "Hey, you guys, there's this bill in House Ways and Means, and you really, but I can say, "Hey, everybody, the Green Energy Alliance has a blog you all should read." So thank you.
Nice, nice, nice.
Thank you.
Well,
That's all Carrie Catan, our policy advocate. She's great.
She's awesome.
yes, thank you for the work of Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And let's all remember that we are a network. We are allies. We hold each other up. We support each other. We need each other, particularly at these times. So thank you for all the work you're doing in your communities. And please let us know at MassEnergize how we can support you better, more effectively, and how we can help lift your voices as well. So thank you again for the time you've spent tonight. And if people are amenable, and Karen, I'm gonna, take you at your word. Let's plan a community of practice that doesn't have presentations, but what we will encourage people to do is do come with your stories, do come with sharing, do come with questions, because otherwise we don't want an hour of awkward silence. Not that I'm worried about that, but it would be good to have some preparation ahead of time. And maybe what we'll do is tap a few people who would be willing to share some of their thoughts or questions to get a conversation going. Karen, does that sound like a good plan to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. It's really great to see all of you, and look forward to our next time together. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah, Wendy, please.
Do you know what's happened with New York City and San Francisco in terms of their climate week in May?
Well, so New York City Climate Week is in the fall. It's in September, and that is certainly being planned for next September. So Boston's Climate Week is going to be in May. San Francisco's, I'm not sure when their Climate Week is. Does anybody else know? That feels like a long ways away to me. But I did go to New York's Climate Week, and it was fantastic this last year.
What'd they do?
Oh, it's the city is, I mean, they have hundreds of events across the city. And basically the way it's organized is anybody can just organize an event and publicize it. And then, so it's not centrally organized. It's very decentralized. So Boston's is going to be the same. So MassEnergize is just going to be offering, events during Climate Week. And anybody else can also offer events during Climate Week. And what it is it focuses attention around a week where people really concentrate their energies, and it really builds a lot of creative momentum.
Well, that's a little bit of a solution to what we were talking about not hushing,
yes,
letting us be hushed.
Yeah. You know what? I will add to our resources that Joe will send out. I'll put in a link to the Boston Climate Week, or you could just Google Boston Climate Week 2026. It's something bostonclimateweek.org. It's a pretty self-explanatory URL website, but do go on. I'm just trying to see if I have it written down here. I think it's just climateweek.org or bostonclimateweek.org or something.
Okay.
So it's May, I think it's May, as I said, I think it's May 3rd to the 10th, I believe. So
The San Francisco Climate Week is April 18th.
Okay.
So that's coming up.
That's coming up soon. Thank you, Leslie.
We in Medfield have a volunteer group who's been running climate weeks for us for the last 5 years.
Terrific. And you call it just Climate Week, or you call it
Yes, we
something?
call it the Climate Week, and people just put on anything from, any sustainability thing, from beekeeping, solar panels, composting, mosquito dunks, whatever.
Fantastic. See, Medfield is leading the pack. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And please feel free to, share resources or share ideas. Again, this is really intended to be a place of sharing and mutual support. So, okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.